GT Divide Podcast coming to another episode. Appreciate you guys rocking with me as we continue this. Should God be reimagined in America? Um, so last one was a little bit. Episode 3 is a little bit shorter. Um, had a Catholic lady come on, or ex-Catholic, speak about how she did not like in the Catholic Church how you kind of just sinned all week and then went and confessed and then you're good to go. So just she said it basically breeds sinners, breeds narcissists. She also said that she didn't believe that you had to go to a place with shiny glass, cool painted glass windows to get a relationship with God, which I agree with wholeheartedly. Then she also concluded, which was good, that her relationship with God she got closer to God when she left the church. So they brought her on too. So you got a pastor, you got a woman who stopped believing because her grandpa died and she didn't like the fact that he was in hell. That was her belief. She was probably in that, like I said, that 80s, 90s, pounded it into your head. If you don't do this right, you'll get some old school dudes still do that today. And like I said, if you speak to the kiddos, you speak to the youth like that, it's because you have no substance. And if you have no substance, then I mean, God is substance, so you must not be talking about God if you have no substance. But I'm gonna let him continue to speak, and so now we got these three people all in one. So we're gonna go ahead and dive in.
You see the hypocrisy.
Yes.
Hit the reset button. I'm all good.
It was like a Sunday was their cleanse, but it wasn't so they were forgiven. It was so that they could go out and disrupt the world again tomorrow and not feel guilty about it when the next Sunday comes.
What do you say about all this, Pastor?
I think the religion, church has to own its history, its pattern of abuse, of hurt, and to acknowledge that, and to recognize. And I think this is an important.
I think that he's right, and I think that he now has put religion in its rightful place. The church, religion has to. I think he understands now that religion and God are two separate things. I've always thought that. I will continue to think that. There's no way you can change my mind because they're not. They're not the same. You can look up the definition of religion, and it's not the same as the definition of God. And so I think that churches do have to own it. There's a pattern of abuse. We had a pastor kill his wife. What was her name? Micah Miller. Yeah. Yes. Her husband's a pastor at a church, Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So, it's crazy. So essentially, this young lady was groomed by this man. There's a huge age difference and age gap. So she's groomed by this man. And trust me, this happens all the time in churches, guys. And for me, being a father that has a daughter, you can see my daughter over here, my beautiful daughter. For me, being a father that has a daughter, if you allow your daughter to be groomed like that, you're a coward. 100% a coward. I don't give a damn if it's a pastor of the church. I will go in there and speak my mind. I don't care. What you won't do is bring any harm to my kids. That's what you won't do. But this type of stuff happens in the church all the time. Swept under the rug. And that's part of the problem. Just because you put a cross on top of a building and you have a pastor does not mean that God is in that building. That doesn't mean anything. It's a symbol to the outside world, right? That's what it is. When you build a building, you put a cross on top of it, and you name your church. It's an image to the outside world. What's inside could be wicked. Sounds like I'm describing something in particular, right? That's narcissists. Perfect to the outside world, wicked as heck at home. If you ever been in a relationship with one, you gonna know. And the church breeds narcissism. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. He was talking about how he left the church. Him and his wife had disagreement. He didn't like going. He didn't like the pastor. Wife loved the pastor. She had some friends there, some people that she spent a lot of time with. And he said, when it gets to a point where it feels like your wife loves the pastor more than she loves you, that's when you know it's time to pull the plug. So he pulled the plug. He said, I'm leaving. I'm not going to church. You know, she was mad at him, upset with him. She wanted to go there. But understand this. That's what happens in these situations. People idolize the pastor. People idolize the worship music. People idolize the worship school teacher. The people idolize these people. And what happens is when you idolize people, you don't see the people until you see them. My mom always told me, she said, never ever in your life put a man or woman in between you and God. And that phrase never rang more true than when I started going to church, regular church. Spent the majority of my teenage years, I went to home meetings, so it wasn't like we had people that would like lead prayer and lead worship, but it was like we all just went there to fellowship, essentially. We had one person, we didn't just have one person speak the whole time. So I wasn't used to church. So when I started going to church, let me tell you, I learned more about religion when going to churches than I had in my whole entire life. Not a lot about God. Learned more about God back when I was a teenager. But as I've gone to church over the last decade or so, I've learned a lot about religion and how it works, the nuances of religion. And you have to be careful. That's all I'm going to say. You have to be careful.
Point. Sometimes, people believe in Jesus, or at least want to subscribe to Jesus. It's the followers of Jesus that sometimes turn people off. I think also we have to be authentic about our own weaknesses. In the church, we call it sin, but I have some dysfunctions. Maybe outside of religiosity, they may refer to this some dysfunctions, and to own them.
And that's crazy. You see how he changed it? So a pastor has dysfunctions outside of religion, outside of the church, has dysfunctions. Here's my thing. It still is sin. If it's sin, it's sin. You got to call it sin. If I sin, you'll tell me I sin. If you sin, it's dysfunctions. That's idolization, right? So they put themselves on a pedestal where the rules don't apply to them. Got to be careful.
Those and to recognize that also and this is the power of religion, that I cannot do it on my own. There's some things that I have to draw a greater sense of power from to address. When we think about, your grandfather, I always tell people, God knows the sum total of who we are. You get a glimpse of me as Pastor Butler. My wife gets a glimpse of me as Richie, husband. My children get a glimpse of me. Only God knows the full totality of who I am. And so at the end of the day, I believe that I cannot subscribe someone to heaven or hell. Only God. And ultimately, God is that final judge. And I love this guy. I love this guy, man. This guy growing on, because he went from religion. Now he understands the task at hand. God is what changes the hearts of men and women on the earth. So God is speaking through him to this lady, because the totality of understanding of a whole person, who they are, at the heart of them is God. So whether or not you believe or not, God knows who you are. He knows what you've done, and he knows what he sent you here to do. Now, if he sent you here to do something and you did it, he's going to take care of you. He's going to take care of you. And who's to say? He may not have spoke on his belief in God. Her grandpa might have known God personally. Just because he don't go to church and he don't show. Because you got to think also, she's thinking back in time, 90s or 80s, 90s, when they were pounding heaven, hell, this and that. They were pounding it in. So she's thinking back in that time to where that's what they were talking about. Those were the words and discernment of those times. And so she's thinking of that. And so now he's like, oh, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. I don't even know. Like, God knows. Only God knows if her grandpa believed in him. He might have, and just didn't really speak on it a lot. There's people out there like that. I don't know how God is going to make that decision. I know what we have been taught, but I also believe that God transcends all of this. and is making room and ways for us to come closer to him and to offer us a way forward.
And you've seen,
I like that. God is God, man. It literally is God, like 100%. That's what it is. When you give God to people like that, then you change hearts. Giving religion doesn't change anything.
things happen in the Catholic Church that were just abusive,
Yeah, straight out.
and you suffered as a child as well.
Absolutely. I think my turning point, I was sexually assaulted when I was 8 years old, and I hid that in secrecy. And then I saw other boys be in the exact same position in churches, and I saw the church, instead of them protect the person who was abused, they went and protected and prayed over the person who was the abuser.
Like I said, and I will say it, and I will shout it from the rooftops. Just because you build a building with bricks and put a cross on top of it does not mean God is in that building. Does not mean God is in that building, guys. God is where his people fellowship. I'll never forget hearing that BTK, most notorious killer in Wichita history, was a deacon at a church. A murderer, sinister, pure evil, stepped foot into your brick and mortar building. Right? We had a pastor, well, not a pastor, he was a church goer that owned an abortion clinic, get killed inside a church. Somebody walked in there, the gun killed him. I'm saying these things to tell you that just because it's a building with a cross on top of it, don't mean God is in there. Does not mean God is in there. That just means that it's a building with a cross on top of it. The church, from a religious standpoint, and the church from a godly standpoint are two different things. Religious church is the building with the cross on top of it. Godly church is alive. It's a living, breathing body of Christ. His people are his church. He dwells within his people, not within a building made out of brick and mortar. So a religious church and a godly church are two different things.
And they would ostracize and victimize and just blame the person who was abused and just tell them, this is just be quiet. You know what happens in these four walls? They stay within these four walls.
And see, God God ain't in there. You can hide secrets in them four walls. And you know what always got me, man? You know, I kind of pay attention to is that you have churches where the pastors be married, but they ain't wearing a wedding ring, right? Because a ring is a sign of unity, right? A sign of eternity, circle of trust. I'm kind of speaking from Meet the Parents, but it literally is damning to see what is going on inside the church today. We have been put into a position where ain't no looking back, man. Ain't no looking back. It's tough. It's hard work. But religion has skewed the vision of God.
And I said, how can I come to this church and talk to you about my struggles, the things that are hurting me when I see what you've done to others? I've seen that the person who gets on that stage, who preaches and tells us that God is love and that he shows all mercy. I've seen that person beat their child in the parking lot before entering church. So these are things that we witness. We see people.
That lady in the back over there shaking her head. Well, yes, 100%. That's what we're seeing. What we're seeing is that the religious church, I'm splitting the churches up now. Sorry, guys. If you're in a religious church, I apologize to you. A godly church is alive and well. The religious church is not. The religious church is dying quickly. Why is it dying quickly? Because God didn't put it there. If God put it there, it wouldn't be dying at all. Man Anything man makes eventually goes away. Anything God makes is eternal. Men can't make anything eternal. We can build a house. Eventually, the house will break down. Eventually, the foundation will move. You'll get cracks inside of it. It'll be unlivable, man. I remember my grandma's house way over there on St. Francis off of 13th. Breaking down. Can you add some new bones to it? But it's still going to continue to break down. Eventually, it's not going to be there anymore. Because man made it, right? Religion comes from man. Religious churches come from man. They're not going to be eternal because God didn't make it. God did not make religious churches. No, he did not. If y'all want to sit here and argue that with me, find a verse in the Bible where God said he did. And I'll believe you, but you're not going to find one. God told us in his word what the church was. Man decided, well, I want to make something else the church. And then this is what happens when men make their own things apart from God. Now, I know some of y'all are going to say, well, God is in control of that. God put kings in rule that weren't good for the people to show the people what they needed to do and what they needed to be dealing with. So he can definitely allow men to make religious churches to show you dummies, no, not you dummies, but you people, that not all things that have God's name slapped on it are good things. Or no, not all things that have God's name slapped on it are righteous.
Say something and perform differently. And then we see the reactions. I feel like that's the main theme, especially in millennials, where it's like we were raised in these churches, which is why we aren't going to them.
Are you okay with God? You're just not okay with all of the agents of God.
Yes.
There's a simple fix to that.
Yeah.
Simple fix to your problem and yours as well.
Which would be?
Just take away free will.
I want to sit here as I say I had a pause. I can't let it run too long. They're going to copyright me.
Yeah.
I would argue in the Christian system, there is not free will.
Right.
Oh, but there is.
Hold up. I want to hear what they got to say. I want to hear what they got to say.
Yeah. There
Is there? I feel like there's accommodations.
If God was running the whole thing, do you think all these people would be able to exercise this free will and make these bad choices?
No, absolutely not. But
They did. Hold up. Let me pull my mic down real quick. He just got through proving my point. If God was running these things, if God was in charge of these things, would this crap be going on? Inside, can you honestly say God has ordained this crap? No, you can't. You absolutely can't. There's no way that you can even give me a religious person on the podcast. You call me. I'll put my number down there. You can call me. You can email me. You can leave a message. I'll email you. That believes that God ordained, right? Oh, well, God's in charge of it. Yes, God's in charge of everything. But with free will, men get to choose. With free will, men get to choose. Even the Bible, man, that's crazy. Even the Bible. Sorry to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Even the Bible, that what kills me about people is like, well, the Bible I read, well, God. I'm like, well, there's a Bible with 100 and some books. Did God ordain that Bible? Oh, so he just wanted you to have 33 now. He just wanted you to have 40. He just wanted you to have 60, right? It came from God. He did that. I'm going to need y'all to understand something. Just because God's name is on it, don't mean God ordained it. Men can put God's name on. Satan can put God's name on something. And how y'all thinking, well, God's name's on it, so he that's what he did. That's what he does. Do y'all not understand your enemy, Satan, knows God intricately because he was up there. So he will make things close enough to deceive you. That's why you have to know your enemy. That's a whole other podcast, guys. I have a podcast about that. Look back in my archives, man. I have a podcast about understanding your enemy because you have to understand in Christianity, in the spiritual battle that we fight, you have to understand and know your enemy because your enemy is so close to your friend that you may not be able to tell the difference.
I also
mean-
think that there's a point in these specific abusers finding a community of people who will just let them do whatever they want. Because there's some pastors who can't. Some pastors will be reported to the police if something happens. But for majority cases, it's not. They have a community. They know what to say.
She talking about narcissism. She talking about manipulation. Manipulative people, right? If y'all think that that's from God, something is wrong with you. If you can sit here today and tell me that a manipulative person is from God, something is up, and you need to get something checked out, something fixed, because that don't make zero sense to me. God does not condone manipulating people. If he condoned that, then Jezebel would still been alive. They would not have trampled her with horses. She died the most gruesome death in the Bible because that's what she was, a manipulator. So if you think God ordains manipulation, you are out of your mind.
They know who to find to be able to commit the things that they do and just be let alone and left alone for a long time.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying this may very well be that the church is not doing what they need to do to have the confidence and faith and comfort to minister to the people they're supposed to be ministered to. They need to step up.
I agree. The church has a duty, just like Christians have a duty, to do the right thing, to do the righteous thing. Just because you put God's name on something doesn't make it righteous. Does not make it righteous. God don't need his name put on anything because God is who he is. So if you feel like you need to put his name on something or change something for him, it ain't righteous, guys. It's not righteous. It's not. And so that's the battle that we have today, guys. That's the battle we have in reimagining Christianity in America. The battle between religion and God. And there is a battle, guys. If you think there ain't no battle, then you ain't paying no dang attention. Religion and God are two different things. Two different things. This is great to watch. Great to hear the different opinions. You got a Christian pastor, you got a Christian female that used to believe in the Christian, like that's what she was. She was a Christian. Then you got a Catholic person too. So you get all the pieces of the puzzle together under one monologue, and they get to speak. I would like to know what you guys think about it, though. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about the church. What's going on in the church today, guys? What's going on? What's the problem in the church today that has caused us to get to this point? Because we're at a point right now where it's getting out of control. It's bad. It's terrible. We're at a point where it is terrible. The church has turned into something it wasn't meant to be. But we're here now, so we have to do something about it. It's GT Divide Podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment.